Okay, fine. So this sikha is really amazing. What the Rebbe does over here is the Rebbe has a few favorite topics. And in this sikha, the Rebbe combines all the favorite things that he likes to talk about. First of all, he loves Rambam. Every single word in the Rambam by the Rebbe is it's like honey. He's medayik. Every single word has to fit in, every single detail. And the Rambam was a very organized writer, and that's why the Rebbe is so exact in every word and the order of things and the placement of things in the Rambam. Because if you look at the style of the Rambam, before he says, I'm going to go ahead and give you 14 sections that are going to talk about this and this and this and this. And then at the beginning of each section, he talks about what I'm going to talk about. And at the end, he sums up what he's speaking about. So he's a very organized type of person. So therefore, if anything is in the wrong place and out of place, or anything is excessive or does not serve the purpose.
Sorry, I got a request from Shlomo to להקדיש את השיעור לעילוי נשמתו של החייל נועם בן אורנה שנהרג בבוקר.
Yeah. So, like we said, Lili Nishmas, this Chayal and
Noam ben
Orna should have an aliyah, and the main thing is to come down quickly right now with the Tchias HaMesim immediately. And that's another thing, that the Rebbe Kachzachin is the Geula. And the point of this Sikh is going to be how really, even in the worst time of destruction, we already have the kernel, the seed, the core idea of the Geula, and that is bound up with something as seemingly, such a side point seemingly, the location of the Aron in the Beis Hamikdash. Where the Aron was located, where the Aron was placed, that is something that is already has in it the seeds of the Geula, which is another favorite topic of the Rebbe, which is the concept of Geula. And of course, that the anything having to do with the Beis Hamikdash has to be everlasting, and there's no complete cessation, there's no stoppage of it, and so on. So we're gonna learn the Rambam, and the Rebbe is going to analyze a lot of details over here in the Rambam. In Yiddish we say mit afhalten cup sometimes. In other words, you gotta concentrate. I know it's late at night already. Most people over here work for a living all day. They've had a long day. They've been up very early, but it's really very beautiful. And I'll try to give you, before we actually learn it inside, to see where he's going with it, so it'll be easier to settle in the head. But it's really a beautiful, beautiful concept. The Rebbe is going to talk. And I'm talking about it outside to make it easier to get it inside. The Rebbe is going to talk about an amazing thing that took place with the Aron. There are a few different opinions in the Gemara what happened with the Aron and the Luchos after the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. There are different opinions. One opinion holds it was taken in captivity to Bavel. Melech Bavel destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. It went in captivity, and that was it. In the second Beis Hamikdash, there was no Aron, and it remained over there in captivity. Another opinion the Gemara holds it was hidden, but it was hidden under the Lishkas Ha'etzim, where they used to have the wood prepared for making the karbanis. That's the whole story. The Gemara goes over there that there was once a kohen that discovered the place, or he thought he discovered the place because he felt a hollow sound coming from one of the boards, and he passed away because they didn't want to have the secret. This is before the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. It was already hidden over there. But the Rambam's approach is the opinion that holds that Shlomo Hamelech made caverns. He made an area under the Kodesh Hakodoshim, hidden, winding caverns, hidden places under the Beis Hamikdash, where the Aron would be hidden away. And that place still has in it the Aron. it still contains in it the Aron ad hayom hazeh. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you that the Rebbe is going to bring out with this a beautiful idea. That the fact that the Aron is still there inside the location under the Kodesh Hakodoshim till now, and this was established by Shlomo Hamelech. Shlomo Hamelech, when he built the Beis Hamikdash, made and dug out that area for the Aron to be placed eventually by Melech Yeshayahu many years later, assured that the holiness of the building of the Beis Hamikdash continued throughout all time, through the times of the Bayis Sheni when there was no actual physical Aron in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and even through now until Mashiach comes, and the Rebbe says, therefore it's all one Beis Hamikdash really. It's the same Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, Bayis Shlishi, it's all one thing. And to reach this conclusion, the Rebbe is going to bring out from different expressions of the Rambam about this. One more point. The Rambam says that he's a sefer of halachas. In other words, he's not a history book. He's not about talking philosophy. That's in other Sfarim the Rambam talks in philosophy. That's the Moir Nevuchim. But the sefer we're talking about now, Mishnah Torah, La Rambam, the only sefer that the Rambam wrote in Lashon Kodesh, everything else he wrote in Arabic, is meant to be a halacha sefer. In halachas Sfarim, something that teaches you halachas of Torah, it doesn't go into history. The Rambam, unusually, when he talks about the Aron, speaks about the whole history of the Aron, where did it go, and where Shlomo Hamelech prepared, and what happened with it afterwards, which seems to have no bearing on halacha, what we need to know about the Beis Hamikdash. And from this, the Rebbe brings out how it is important. It's important to notice, to be able to know about the Kedusha, the Beis Hamikdash, and so on. Okay, let's begin. Enough introduction. Bereish Perek Daled Mehilchas Beis Abchira, at the beginning of the 4th chapter of Hilchas Beis Abchira, which is the laws. This is what the Rambam calls the Beis Hamikdash. He calls it Beis Abchira. La'achar shehisker Rambam es advarim shnimtzu bekodesh hakodoshim. He enumerates different types of things that was present. Even hoisa bekodesh hakodoshim b'ma'aravoi shaholav ashallah ha'aya aron munach. That's the beginning of the 4th chapter. Now, the Rebbe is going to talk about later that this chapter is not about the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash. That's already spoken about in the previous parakim. This chapter Daled, Perek Daled, is about mainly talking about the building. How is the building measured? How the length? How many chambers? How many rooms? And so on. But how does he begin this Perek? He begins this Perek talking about the Aron. He's going to speak about that later. Why does the Perek, that's not talking about the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash, begin talking about the Aron? So he says, after he introduces the Aron, so then he goes into the history. Under the Kodesh Hakodoshim, b'matmoinios amukos ve'akalkolos, winding deep caverns or concealed places. And then many years later, Shlomo Hamelech tziva v'ganzei b'makim shebana Shlomo, shenemar, it says in a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, v'yomer l'leviim hamevinim l'chol Yisrael. The Leviim over here means those from Shevet Levi, the Koyanim. It seems to be from what the Rebbe says later, that they teach all the Yidden. Hakodoshim LaHashem. He told them to know as Aron HaKodesh Bayis Sheni ben David Melech Yisrael. Put it in that room.
How does it fit with what Gemara said?
That's what I'm saying. There's 3 opinions. Even according to those other opinions, first Yeshayahu put it there, and then it went into Golos. So he said, put it in that room under the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and then ein lechem masa b'kosef ata or ata ivdu es Hashem alakeichem v'goymer, because it's not present over there. You're not going to carry around the Aron. V'nignas imay mata Aron v'chulu, that it says that these were things that were there also in the Kodesh Hakodoshim. V'chol elu loy chazru bebayis Sheni. In the second Beis Hamikdash, there was no Aron. Af urim v'tumim shoyu bebayis Sheni loy hoyu meshivim beruach hakodesh. The miracle that when Am Yisrael needed to have instruction from Hashem, they used to go and ask by the Urim V'Tumim, and miraculously the Urim V'Tumim would answer. So even though there was the whole Choshen and the Urim V'Tumim in the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, but that miracle that the Kohen Gadol can answer through the Urim V'Tumim, different letters on the Choshen lit up, and that's how he knew to answer the question, that didn't function in the times of the second Beis Hamikdash. Now, by the way, the Urim V'Tumim, again, I'm giving you a head start of what he's going to talk about. The Urim V'Tumim have nothing to do with the Aron. It wasn't located in the Kodesh Hakodoshim. It has to do with Big Day Kahuna, the begodim, the garments that the Kohen Gadol wore. Why does the Rambam need to bring this in here? You want to tell me about the Urim V'Tumim? Fine. When we talk about one of the things that the Kohen Gadol wore, the Big Day Kohen Gadol, there's a whole section that talks about it. But it doesn't belong over here. The Rebbe is going to point out that there's a certain tzad hashava, a common denominator between the Aron and the Urim V'Tumim, the way they functioned in the second Beis Hamikdash. Why do we need to even know this whole story? Especially at such great length. Who did it, and who prepared it, and who made the caverns? Following divrei Rambam b'sifrei Yad HaChazaka lehalacha amurim v'dvarim shein yoytzem mehem din ma'adinim v'loy musar v'anhage v'yediya hatzricha. Sometimes the Rambam will say things that you could derive from it a moral lesson, an ethical lesson, musar. At different halachas, he will tell you at the end of Hilchas Sukkah, he will teach you about the great milah of serving Hashem with joy. At the end of Hilchas Me'ilah, he teaches you some other lesson, and so on. There's different places where the Rambam is going to go a little bit away from halacha, because it's also teaching you something having to do with musar, something teaching you how to be a better person. But here, this has nothing to do. It's not halacha. It's not something that's going to teach you to become a better person by knowing that you should put the Aron in the place where Shlomo Hamelech already prepared when he built the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'ein medarki zal li'tofu ha'mechibur zeh, like the Mefarshim ask. You say the Mazum, Inyan zeh, Malkin va'oifen knizas ha'Aron is actually machloikis shonli, as I mentioned before. Some people say it went to Bavel. Some people say it was under the room where they stored the wood in the Beis Hamikdash. And some say it was under the Kodesh Hakodoshim. V'im kein, l'shem mahi chriya ha'Rambam k'divrei ha'echad, kivin shalachura ein Inyan zeh negeh l'dina. In other words,
Is it where the other two opinions also say that it was there initially and then it left?
So there is such a day. He's going to bring it down in a footnote later in our order. He's going to bring down that some people say that even those that say that it was hidden, it was only hidden temporarily, and then afterwards it was.
It's not out from the Marshal. The Marshal and the Rambam
I'm talking about it all over here. You're going to talk about it soon. I think it's from the Yavitz. I'm not sure. So the Rambam, because you're Sefer Halachas, of course, there's different times in the Gemara when there's a machloikis. Now, by the way, just to point out, the Rambam is one of the few Sfarim of Halachas that deal with Halachas having to do with the Beis Hamikdash as well. Other Sifrei Halachas, like the Shulchan Aruch, the Torah, and things like that, they deal with halachas that we can do now without a Beis Hamikdash. They do not deal, you won't find in Shulchan Aruch anything about how you bring a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash, or what the means of building the Beis Hamikdash is, and so on. The Rambam is a Sefer Halachas, but a Sefer Halachas for every time in Jewish history, including what's going to be when Mashiach comes. So, if there's a machloikis in Gemara, whether it's a machloikis in Gemara of a halacha that matters now, or whether it's a machloikas in Gemara of something that matters when Mashiach is going to come concerning the Beis Hamikdash. So the Rambam, being a Sefer Halachos, is going to have to come down on the side of one particular opinion versus a different opinion. But when you're dealing with something that's seemingly not any matter to halacha, and there's different opinions in the Gemara, what happened with the Aron eventually? So what's pushing the Rambam? Why does he have to enter into deciding between the different opinions? This is not the style of the Rambam. The Rambam's here to teach us halacha. So not only does he get into a topic that's not halacha, but he gets into a machloikis that doesn't matter to halacha, seemingly. Base. Yesh mefarshim shetzirtzu shetzoyrech gadol yesh rabbeinu bedavar zel lefi shetasoi shetafas lo lekama beperik vav mahalachas halalu. In other words, chapter 6 of Hilchos Beis Habchira, he says shekedushas habayis loy batla. The kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash is still there. That's why you can't go on certain in the Harabayis and things like that. The Savar Rabbeinu Dahach.
According to Rambam, you can't walk anywhere.
Yeah. I'm not. I don't want to get into a side thing now. The Savar Rabbeinu Dahach Milsa the Kedusha Bayis loy batla Ozla Kiman the Svira loy Aron b'mkaymay nignas. He's saying like this, since the Rambam later on says in chapter 6 that the Kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash still has the same holiness as before, even though there's no physical Beis Hamikdash. So this Meforish is saying that's only true because you believe that the Aron is there. If the Aron wouldn't be there, then there would not be the Kedusha of the Makom HaMikdash. Concerning entering the place of the Beis Hamikdash, a person is tamei and so on, it makes sense that it's dependent upon the Aron. Why do I connect it with the Aron if you're allowed to come into the Beis Hamikdash and not allowed to come in the Ksiv, the Beis Varoiches, El Pnei HaKapoides v'chulu. In other words, he's going past the level of the curtain to face the kapoides, the covering of the Aron, the lid over the Aron. So we see that the entrance has to do with the fact that there's an Aron there. And if there's no Aron, there's no problem with entering. So since the Rambam says there's a kedusha over here, there's a holiness that doesn't allow you to enter, so you need to speak about the Aron being hidden in the Beis Hamikdash. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe doesn't like this answer. Kibenois of Lazar Rambam asked me about time in Mashakot for Shekitchlo Shaita, Vikitchlo Lavoi, Lefisha Kedushas, Hamigdash, Virushalayim, Neashchina, Vishchina Eina Betela. The Rambam, when he explains about the holiness of the place of the Migdash, he did not connect it to the Aron. The holiness is because when they were Mekadesh, the place of the Beis Hamikdash in Bayis Sheni with Ezra, they were Mekadesh it, they sanctified it for the present time and for all times. That even it has nothing to do with the Aron, and it has to do because of the Shechina, and the Shechina never stops. So this teretz, I want to say that the Rambam has to get into the Aron to be able to explain why it's still holy. That's not the reason that the Rambam says why it's still holy. The Rambam says it's still holy because the Shechina is there, because they were Mekadesh it for all time. In addition to that, Eina Muvan, Lefiza Havle La Rambam Loimer Bekitzer Ubefeiru Sha'aron B'Mekaymai Nignas. He doesn't have to go into the whole lengthy story that Shlomo prepared it and Neshiyo put it in, and there was a whole, again, all these details are not important for to be able to tell you why the Beis Hamikdash still has Kedusha in it. The Ilu Rambam, instead of taking the short way, he says, Aleph, so he's going to go through 6 issues over here. Aleph, Sasam, Bona Boy Makim Lignas Bayis Aron. Kach sheyesh makim lefarish tevas boy koy ala bayis shenisker koydem besamach loy v'loy ala Kodesh Hakodoshim shelifnei fanav. Because in the halacha it says that he built in it. Now he built a place lignois boy as Aron. What does he talk about a sentence beforehand? When Shlomo Hamelech built the Beis Hamikdash. So the word boy in it can go on the general Beis Hamikdash. Not like it says earlier, the 3 lines earlier, it says the Kodesh Hakodoshim. So you don't know what the boy is referring to. V'nimtza comes out, she'ikar chasam na sefer, ingen she'aron b'mkaymen nigdnas, einay mudgish b'divrei Rambam. Beis, lo yhevi al zeh sakasav amuva b'gemara v'hi sham ada yamazeh, she'mudgish b'y she'aron nimtza gam akshav b'mkaymen. All the Rambam brings is that Yeshayahu Hamelech told the Koyanim, go ahead and hide it in the room that Shlomo Hamelech prepared on the ground. But if the main point is to say that there is this ongoing Kedusha because the Aron is there, so the main part is he has to say that it's still now the Aron is there. He should have brought that part of the pasuk. That part of the pasuk he leaves out. Gim hadavar eine metaritz klau nema hevi Rambam mesadeh sheyeshiyo ganas Aron prach eine negia klau l'shayla ima Aron b'mkaymen nignos abelish chasa'etzim, which is a different opinion. So again, it doesn't make a difference the details about Yeshayahu Hamelech. There's a whole different explanation. By the way, in connection to your question before, there's a whole different pirush in the pasuk over there what Yeshayahu was talking about. Not that he was talking about putting the Aron on the ground. There are other mefarshim that explain that Yeshayahu and Rashi on the pasuk in the Divrei Yamim says the simple pshat is that Yeshayahu Hamelech replaced the Aron over there because in the times of Menashe there was avodah zarah they put into the place of the Kodesh Hakodoshim. So when it says Yeshayahu Hamelech said to put the Aron in the place that Shlomo Hamelech prepared, he meant simply to put it in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, put it back in its place. Not this whole thing that the Rambam says. In other words, it depends which opinion in the Gemara you're following. That's how you interpret that pasuk over there. Daled, Yeser al Kain, B'shneya in Yonim, Mekoyim Gnizas Ha'aron, Vaydem Mi Nignas, Herech HaRambam V'kama Protim. Aleph, Shlomo Hamelech, Bonas HaMokim L'Gnizas Ha'aron, which is again, why is that important? Beis Shamokim Ulamata Matmoinius Hamukis V'Kalkolos, Gimel Yeshayahu Hamelech Tziva V'Gonzai, V'Loi Gonzai Stam. It could have just said Yeshayahu Hamelech Gonzai. Why does that have to say tziva v'gonzai? But again, every word in the Rambam is very exact. Daled v'gonzai b'makim shabana shloime v'lai gonzai sham. Why didn't you say v'gonzai sham? Vav v'af hetik ma'kosav gamis. Hey v'al zeraya ma'kosav. Again, why is it important to bring the proof? Vav v'af hetik ma'kosav gamas atevis la leviyim amavinim l'chayisrael k'deshim l'Hashem ben David melch Yisrael en chamasa b'kosav v'atiyivus Hashem alakechem. This whole thing doesn't matter if what the Rambam is trying to teach you. The Rambam is trying to teach you that the Aron was placed on the ground for some reason by Yeshayahu Hamelech. Why do you have to say the whole story with the Levium? He told them the Levium should place it there, and now you could go ahead and do your avodah. What does the Levium going back to doing their avodah have to do with what the Rambam is trying to explain? That the Aron is buried on the ground under the Kodesh Hakodoshim. This has nothing to do with the whole point. Shalachura ein noiges laichache sheyeshayahu Hamelech tziva v'ganzer v'makim shlabana shloima. Umaya nafkiusul adina mechal aprotim anal, like the Rebbe said, the Rambam only brings down things that are a practical halach. Gim. Gam tzarek lahavin. Aleph. Bepashtus loshna Rambam. V'yada shesoife lecharev. When it talks about the history, it says when Shlomo Hamelech was building the Beis Hamikdash, and he knew that eventually it will be destroyed. Bana by makim. Mashma sheshloim bana makim zeva Beis Hamikdash medas atzmei lefi sheyada shesoife lecharev. Could Shlomo Hamelech have done that? Could Shlomo Hamelech have done anything in the Beis Hamikdash just on his own opinion? No. V'tamor harikol chelkei uprati abayis nivnu al pitzivu Hashem. Hakoil, it says in the pasuk, miksav miyad Hashem alai hiskil. All of this, every detail of the Beis Hamikdash was built by Shlomo Hamelech because this is what he was told. V'im kein, eich yitochen sh'ha'yisef shloime bonim makom Beis Hamikdash medas ha'atzmai. That's which seems to be the mashmos. The Rebbe is going to say no. That's not what this sentence means, based on what he's going to talk about later on. But from now, it looks like that Shlomo Hamelech saw Baruch HaKodesh, Beis Hamikdash is going to become destroyed. Okay, we're gonna put together Plan B. Plan B will be to have a place on the ground to put the Aron. Beis Mao Shesiyam Rambam as Hanal Barichas, like I mentioned before, B'dvarim Oides HaOrim V'tum Bayis Sheni. L'chore Omnam Yesh Tzad HaShava Ben Orim V'tum LaAron Sheshneim Lechazru Bayis Sheni. Ach Kol Inyan HaOrim V'tumim Ein Mekaymei B'Hilchas Beis HaBchira, which talks about the Beis Hamikdash and the Kalim that were built for the Beis Hamikdash. Ki im Eitzel Bigdei Kuna. After he talks about the Hilchas Beis Hamikdash, there's a separate section of halachas that speak about all the different laws about the Klei Hamikdash and the ones that do the avoid in it. Rambam also mentions it over there. In other words, if the Rambam is bringing it here, it's not just because it's similar. It must somehow help us understand what's going on here with the Aron by showing this common denominator. He's not just going to bring it in. If he's anyway going to talk about it later, so you'll put it together. If anything, maybe when he talks about it later, he could say, this is no different than what we spoke about before about the Aron. But what forces him now talking about the Aron to bring in about the Urim B'tumim? The Urim B'tumim doesn't belong in this section of the Rambam at all. So he says, "Val korchach tzarich loymar sheshayches ha'urim v'tumim la'aron ein rak b'kach shaloi chazru b'bayis sheni ela yesh lam shayches le'etzem inyan ha'aron u'mahai taim ahuvar adovr b'halachas elu yachad im dinei ha'aron." So now the Rebbe is going to talk about what I mentioned before. Where does the Rambam speak about the Aron? There is Perek Beis. He talks about the Mizbeach and the measurements of the Mizbeach and how the Mizbeach was built, etc., etc. Then, in Perek Gimel, he talks about the Menorah and the Shulchan and other Kalim, the Kiyar, and so on, the Kalim that were in the Beis Hamikdash. And then, in chapter 4, he starts off with the Aron, talks only the first halacha about the Aron, and the rest is about the building of the Beis Hamikdash. This is very strange, like I mentioned before. It should be in the section that talk about the different, if you want to use that term, the different furnishings of the Beis Hamikdash. It doesn't belong in the section that talks about the architecture of the Beis Hamikdash. Why is the Aron in that section in Perek Daled? Says, the Rebbe is going to work through the order of these 4 chapters. Eilein dvarim shem ikar b'inyan habayis oisen by Kodesh Hakodoshim ulam v'chulu. V'achar kach kasav oisen b'mikdash kelim chulu umanas klei hamikdash u'mekayma. So Perek Aleph is an overview. It speaks about everything in general. It speaks about building the Beis Hamikdash. It speaks about when it was built, when you're supposed to build it, the different kalim that were in the Beis Hamikdash. Then, once he talks about the overview, then he starts going the next few prakim into the details. The prakim shal achriza, Perek Sheni v'shlishi, Bir Rambam Mesuras HaKelim Cholum, u'beperek Revi Asuras Habayis, Koisla Habayis, Ha'heichel Ha'shorim v'chul. V'oila shayl haloi l'chura ha'aron hu miklei hamikdash. V'im kein ma la'richas ha'alacha anal oides gnizas ha'aron etzel perek revi tzuras habayis. It shouldn't be in chapter 4 where it's talking about the architecture of the Beis Hamikdash. U'mezeh gufim muchach shema sha'aron oimid b'kodesh Hakodoshim uladas ha'Rambam prat b'tzuras habayis. The Aron makes the Beis Hamikdash what it is. Just like the walls of the Beis Hamikdash make the Beis Hamikdash a Beis Hamikdash, just like the three sections of the Beis Hamikdash make it a Beis Hamikdash, the same thing the Aron does. Ha-Aron eine rak kli hanimtza b'Kodesh Hakodoshim ki shar kli hamikdash hamitzuyim b'heichel chulum elu chelik m'Kodesh Hakodoshim habinyan atzmai. As opposed to all the other parts, all the other kalim are something that's just a keli. It's not part of the building. Kiven Aron oises Beis Hamikdash lebayis laHashem k'may shekasav v'ni'alta l'chasham. It says about the Aron that this is the place where Hashem meets with the Yidden. That's what the Aron's function is. In the following halacha it says why when the Rambam says in Perek Aleph he talks about the Mizbeach and he talks about he says actually in Sif Vav he says va'osim b'mikdash shiva kelim. You make 7 kelim. Mizbeach la'oila shara kabonis, v'kevet sha'oilam b'oilam mizbeach, and v'kiyar, v'kanoi, and then mizbeach l'ktoiris, u'menorah, v'shulchan. But conspicuously absent is the Aron. How is the Aron not mentioned right away in the beginning of Hilchos Beis Hamikdash, where the Rambam enumerates all the different kelim at the Beis Hamikdash? Aron is not there. Because according to the Rambam, the Aron, lefisha Aron, eine kli b'fnei atzmai kim chelik m'Kodesh Hakodoshim. This is an amazing chiddush, it's an amazing insight into why the Rambam would leave that out. But el shalpiza misereres tmiya g'doyla. Lefiza nimtza shbebayis sheni shebay lo yhaya Aron b'mkaymai. Lo yhaya Kodesh Hakodoshim shar no chelik imenu b'shlei musay ke lo yimar shebayis sheni haya chasar lo rak prat ela echad advarim shem ikir bebinyan habayis. If you don't have a mizbeach, if you don't have a menorah, they don't make the Beis Hamikdash into Beis Hamikdash. But the Kodesh Hakodoshim is one of the sections of the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Just like you can't have the Kodesh and just the Azara without a Kodesh HaKadoshim, you can't have it without an Aron, because the Aron is what makes the Kodesh HaKadoshim a Kodesh HaKadoshim. So therefore, once I know that the Aron is part of the architecture of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, part of the very building, so in Bayis Sheni, how did you have a Kodesh HaKadoshim? It wasn't really a Kodesh HaKadoshim. You didn't have an Aron over there. Ukidei l'salek t'miyazu, Herich Rambam b'dvarim oides gnizas ha'aron shal piyam yuvan she'af b'bayis sheni lo hoy chisaron b'binyan habayis. But the Rebbe says in footnote 25, but you could still say mein nafkemin l'maisa. So they had it, and it was a Kodesh Hakodoshim. So he says there is still a mitzvah. One of the mitzvahs of the Asuli Migdash is to learn the halachas of the Beis Hamikdash and to know how we're going to build it based on what we learn in Cheskel and Bayis Sheni, because it's a combination of what says in the Vos Cheskel and Bayis Sheni. So we need to know how the Beis Hamikdash worked architecturally in Bayis Sheni. And that's why the Rambam has to go into explaining for us how the architecture of the Kodesh Hakodoshim worked, because the Aron was still there on the ground. So he says, "Va'bir bezeh, meshakos v'Rambam be'eis shabana shleimes habayis chul, bon by makim lignos by Aron chulum, ein kavanasei la'achriya heichan nignas Aron. Sharei mai hava, like we said, what was in the past was past. It has no bearing la'halacha. Ela kavanose bezel chadish din bebinyan habayis. Genizas ha'aron loy hoyse rak inyan shel b'di'evet v'les breder. It wasn't plan B. It wasn't just, you know what? We want to protect it. The bubble's going to destroy it, or the Beis Hamikdash is going to become destroyed. We cannot allow that the Aron should fall into the Goyim's hands. So therefore, there's plan B, and we have a hiding place for the Aron under the Beis Hamikdash. No, that's not pshat. Ela bebinyan habayis nikva melchatchila sheyiu la'aron kaviyachol shnei mekaymes Beis Hamikdash. Aleph makim gali al even ashia b'kodesh hakodoshim. That's the place where it was located in the first Beis Hamikdash until Shlomo Hamelech hid it away. Beis makim avur gnizasei lamata mekaysh kadoshim matmoinias hamukis v'alkalkolos va'af makim zehu melchatchila chelik ma'abayis. That is, it's an interesting thing. There's a pasuk in Malachim. It says va'asim sham makim la'aron. There are two possible locations in the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo Hamelech designated right away as a place for the Aron. You can't put the Aron wherever you want. A person can decide, you know what, I don't want to put it in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, I want to put it in the Azara, I want to put it in the Ulam, in the Heichel, whatever. You can't do that. But Shlomo Hamelech, when he built the Beis Hamikdash, as we'll soon see by Hashem's instructions, he had two places that were set aside for the Aron. Place number one was in Kodesh Hakodoshim on top, and then place number two was under the Kodesh Hakodoshim.
But it's not directly under the Kodesh Hakodoshim according to him, or
it would come out that's in general location under the Kodesh Hakodoshim.
So then in that thought, then why would it be that we shouldn't be able to go to walk around all over there? As to this,
Because the Kedusha, we're not allowed to walk in also in the places of the Heichel. It's not just the Kodesh Hakodoshim we're not allowed to walk in. Because we're tummy, we can't even walk into the place of the Heichel.
So it's not where the placement is. It's the whole. It's
because of the Heichel.
Going back to the idea. That
Yeah, of Tumah. Not because we're walking into the Kodesh Hakodoshim. It has nothing to do with walking into the Kodesh Hakodoshim. It has to do with Tumah in the Beis Hamikdash. You can't go into the Heichel when you're tummy. Keloimar gnizas ha'aron einay inyan noisef al Beis Hamikdash shenasa kedei lignois v'lishmer ha'aron b'shosh nesoyer ha'tzorich b'kach. Like we said, it's not plan B. Elazeu din bebinyan habayis. Just like the Rambam talks about different places that the architecture of the Beis Hamikdash was. There was a Heichel, and there was an Ulam, and there was a Kodesh Hakodoshim, and so on. So you got to tell you about this place that the Aron was. Kishem shel tzorich shleimus hamikdash yesh hechrich sheyibane makim Kodesh Hakodoshim sheba yamed ha'aron b'ofen golui kach tzorich Beis Hamikdash lemakim gniza b'Kodesh Hakodoshim avur ha'aron. And what do I have then? Ubezeh muftachas nitzchiyusay shel Kodesh Hakodoshim b'yos ha'aron chelik ikri memenu kanal. Now, the Kodesh Hakodoshim is always empowered and always functioning because the Aron is always there. But if the place was not designated as a place for the Aron, it was only a hiding place, so then once it was hidden away, the whole power and the whole strength and the whole building of the Kodesh Hakodoshim would stop being the building of the Kodesh Hakodoshim. Zeu pirish divrei Rambam ubeis shebana shloime chulu v'yada shesayfe l'charav bana b'makim chulu. Ein kavanas advarim sheshloime banas hamakim das atzmi chas v'shalom. Like we said before, Shlomo Hamelech got every detail from Hashem. So why does it say that he knew that eventually it would become destroyed? El shebeis binyanai haya muchrech ladas sheyicharav v'nitztave banas makim hagnizim. It wasn't just enough if Hashem would just give him instructions and say, you know what, I want you to dig out somewhere under the Kodesh Hakodoshim a place without knowing what and when and what for. Then the Rebbe is going to say it wouldn't have become the Kodesh place that's meant for the Aron, so that the Aron is still part of Kodesh Hakodoshim when it's on the ground. Let's see it inside. Like we said before, it can't be anywhere else. Hashem told him, I want you to dig out somewhere under a basement, under the Kodesh Hakodoshim. Wouldn't have told him why. Like the Rebbe says in the footnote, during building is when the Mikdash was niskadish. So then, if he wouldn't have known what that basement is for, loy niskadesh hamakim etor makim lekedushas Aron, bekodesh Hakodoshim. Lefichach hidgish Rambam sheshloim mechulu yada shesoifi lecharev, v'lechein bana by makim lignos by ha'aron. Milchatchila bana shloimim mekayim gniza letzoyrach ha'aron. Kat goshes Rambam shamakim ayamasim ligniza. You got to know that it's like this concealed place that was made for hiding it away. Because he knew all of this that would take place. And in Ha'ara 32, he also adds an interesting thing. This is why the Rambam also brings about the jar of man and about the Mata Aron that was hidden there as well. Why? Because just like these things were in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, when the Aron was in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, the same thing, now that the place of the Kodesh Hakodoshim is now underground, so just like the Aron was placed over there underground, so everything else that was in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, you also put underground. That's in San Saman, the Mata Aron, it all belongs together. That's another Kodesh Hakodoshim. It's a second level in the Kodesh Hakodoshim. Shlomo Hamelech tziva v'gonzi b'makom shabana shloimeh. Like we said before, what does he got to go into that? Kedei lachazek ha'echachet shegnizus ha'aron v'makom zeh lo hoysa inyan shebediavad. It wasn't just Plan B. Elihi nikva melchatchila kach shezayiyah mekoy me'agonis shel ha'aron kechelik mekodesh kadoshim. Mevayer Rambam shegam gnizus ha'aron hoysa. Interestingly enough, loy be'eis ha'churban zman ha'bediavad. If the Rambam wouldn't brought about Shlomo Hamelech, he just would have said that the Aron was hidden away underground. So you might think, you know when it was hidden away? When they saw that the armies of Bavel was attacking, then they went ahead and hid it underground. So that means that the whole hiding underground is only Plan B. But by saying that was Shlomo Hamelech, the one that said that he should put it on the ground, you know it wasn't just Plan B. Beis Hamikdash lo hoysa b'sakana klal, because during the times of Shlomo Hamelech, the Beis Hamikdash was not under threat. There was nobody going to destroy it. Ki yadua toikef yad Yisrael b'zman Yoshiyahu. The Yidden were very powerful then. They had nothing to worry about. They weren't hiding it on the ground as a protection for the Aron. Hoya al derech umein hachnasas ha'aron lekodesh hakodoshim aydei Shlomo. It was in the same way, just like when Shlomo Hamelech put the Aron into the Kodesh Hakodoshim, the very same way was how Shlomo Hamelech told them to put the Aron underground. Aleph, one thing is, Shlomo Hamelech hoya zeh shetziva legonze. You remember we asked, why does it say tziva legonze? Could have just said Shlomo Hamelech hid it away. What's the emphasis on tziva? Al derech hachnasasi lekodesh hakodoshim de Shlomo Hamelech. In other words, this is something that's like the job of the Melech. The Melech Yisrael is the one that's in charge of the building of the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and therefore the Aron being brought into its new place had to be done by a king as well. Beis, and who did it in actuality? Who were the ones who actually put it in? Hachnasa nesai de alavim hamevinim l'chol Yisrael hakadoshim laHashem al derech mashahoya b'mei Shlomo vayeviu hakehanim b'saroim b'ris Hashem al makoymei. So just like in the times of Shlomo Hamelech, it was the kehanim that put the Aron Kodesh in the Kodesh Hakodoshim. The same thing in the times of Shlomo Hamelech, it was the Leviim. It doesn't mean a Levi like Rabbi Shagalo over here. It's going on the kehanim that they are from Shevet Levi. That the kehanim also brought in the Aron into this new section of the Kodesh Hakodoshim, the underground section of the Kodesh Hakodoshim. I'm sorry, the Leviim here means Kohanim. Yeah, because the Rebbe brings a proof, because it can't say that's the Leviim, because Leviim can't go into the Kodesh Hakodoshim. That's first of all. Another thing, it says that that you do not carry it anymore on your shoulders. Who carried everything else in the Beis Hamikdash was carried by the Leviim. But the Aron, according to the Rambam, was only allowed to be carried by the Kohanim. So that's why when it says that Yeshua told the Leviim to bring it down, he doesn't mean the Leviim, but he means those from Shevet Levi, the Kohanim. So he says a very interesting thing. What's the point? Tenu and also Bayis. Again, it's not a basement. It's not a psachadke. It's not some, destroyed little underground basement that's half flooded. It's a Bayis, and it's also Tenu. Get it out of here quickly. We don't want it to get destroyed. Just like in the times of Shlomo Hamelech, it was being put into the Beis Hamikdash. That we asked, why does the Rambam Bechlal have to bring that whole idea that the pasuk says, why is that important? Why does the Rambam have to bring down the Shlomo Hamelech told the Kohanim, go do the avodah? Don't think that now your avoid in the Beis Hamikdash doesn't have any worth because the Beis Hamikdash is missing a crucial part. Hashem Elokeichem Beis Hamikdash ki lo nasa yedei ze chisaron ba'bayis. Now the Rebbe is going to connect it as to why he brings in over here about the Urim V'Tumim. That we said the Urim V'Tumim doesn't belong over here. It should be in the whole different section where he talks about the Begadim, the Big Dekuna, the Big Kohen Gadol. Why does he bring it in here? Because by bringing in about the Urim V'Tumim, it's going to help us understand the function of the Aron still continuing, just like the Urim V'Tumim continue. Zayin, al pikol anal yuvan gam atam shesiyim Rambam es halacha ba'aricha zu be'inyan ha'urim v'tumim b'zman Bayis Sheni. Bekach mevi Rambam dugma l'dvorov betchilas ha'alacha oidus ha'aron shegam b'Bayis Sheni ha'ya'aron b'shleimo es haynu b'mkoime, because the Rambam says that it was in its right place, but it wasn't the place underground, but it was the right place. It wasn't something visible. We see something else that changed and still didn't change. There was an outward change, a goldic change, but it didn't really change. There's different Mefarshim talk about it. What exactly the words Urim V'Tumim go on, and were they different? Did they? But the Rambam holds they were the same thing in Bayis Rishon as the Bayis Sheni. Omnam hoya b'mshina gadol shlo hoya mishivim, koilam lo hoya nishma. Just like the Aron was not visible in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, in the Bayis Sheni, so too the Urim V'Tumim, their job was to be saying and telling nevuos. They weren't heard. Haynu shahaya chisaron begilu shalem beurim v'tumim k'fi shahaya Bayis Rishon avalem hayu b'shlei musam kisiyim divrei Rambam hem ishlimu es minyan abgadim shal kohen gadol. We know the kohen gadol that didn't put on all his 8 garments. An ordinary kohen had 4 begadim, 4 big dekuna. Kohen Gadol had 8 big dekuna. If the Kohen Gadol did not have any one of those 8 begadim and he was meshamish, so then his avodah is possible. But the Urim V'Tumim, according to the Rambam, was the same kosher Urim V'Tumim in the second Beis Hamikdash as the first, even though it didn't have the gilui of the Urim V'Tumim. Just like the Kodesh Hakodoshim was the same Kodesh Hakodoshim, even though there was no gilui of the Aron was on the ground. Val Pikol now nimtza chidush va'afla loirak b'kesher l'shleimus v'mayos k'dush l'Bayis Sheni shegam bezmano yoye Kodesh Hakodoshim b'shleimusi va'aron b'mkoimai el b'kach misba'eres mayla gam b'kdushas Bayis Rishon. In the simple reading of the Rambam, it comes out, you should know, guess what? The Bayis Sheni had the full force and power of the Beis Hamikdash like in Bayis Rishon. Even though the Aron was not on top, because it was underground. But you also see from this halacha how powerful the first Beis Hamikdash was. In what way? Hine bepnimius af boy nitten in shol nitchies. Bayis Sheni yeshle makim gnize shboy loy hay khurben va Aron nimmt beim kaimay ad ayom azeh. So the Bayis Sheni, which we normally look at as not something nitzchi, is in truth nitzchi as well, because the Aron is always there. Therefore, the Kodesh Hakodoshim is always there. Mashik kedusha reshayne kitchel l'shayta v'kitchel l'as lavoim. We do know that there's an idea that the first time when they were Mekadosh it for the time and also for Mashiach's times. That's what called the Shechina. Avokan Mekadosh Rambam in an Amak Yoser Shagam Habinyan Gufa Yesh by Inyan. Even the building, there is still a part of the building in the Beis Hamikdash that still exists. That place on the ground that Shlomo Hamelech built as part of the Beis Hamikdash, that still has the Aron in it. Chelik shehu l'shatei l'asad lavi Kodesh Hakodoshim nivlam l'chatchila ba'ifin sheyesh b'makom gniza l'shatei l'asad lavi. So it comes out the Churban Beis Hamikdash was not really a Churban. It's still going on. It's still a davar nitzchi. If so, the three Batei Hamikdash are not three separate buildings. They're really one building that keeps on being just rebuilt and remodeled. Beis Hamikdash Hasheni v'chein Hashlishi einam Bayis Chodesh b'chelek ikri. El habayis harishon shenivna mechadosh. The second Beis Hamikdash is a rebuilt version of the Bayis Rishon. The third Beis Hamikdash is a rebuilt version of the Bayis Rishon. Kvar b'binyanin shal Bayis Rishon nikve inyan shul l'shaytei los lavi kanal avur habayis hasheni v'hashlishi inyan nitchi. So here he's going to give an example of something totally different that we find Tchias HaMesim, the same idea. Tchias HaMesim doesn't mean that it's a totally new thing, but it's a continuation from before. Yesh loimer shal derech zo b'tchias HaMesim. Ein pirish hadavar she'oz yivru gufim chadashim lagamri, el hagufim yivnu me'etzem luz, she etzem haguf shelifnei zeh, that small bone that will rebuild the whole entire body. Asher ba'in shayach shum chorben v'hefsed, it says you can't destroy the etzem luz, and from that the entire body of a yid will be rebuilt by Tchias HaMesim. So that means I'm not really a new body. It's the same body as before, but it was like boiled down to my DNA, and now I'm taking the DNA again and rebuilding it. But it's really the same thing. It's not a new body that the Eibush is making. Makim ha'aron hu ha'etzem ha'ikir kanal shel Beis Hamikdash shebo yein shayach shum churban v'hefsed umemenu hu binyan ha'mikdash v'hasheni v'hashlishi. Halacha zu Rambam mevia gam dvarim nifloim b'chlolus inyan ha'churban v'hagolus. Beis Hamikdash mitzad atzmai ein eroi shetir by afsharas lein shel churban shekein afshar shetir legoyim b'koyach atzmam eiz shlita chas shalom Beis Hamikdash shu Bayis Hashem. A goy can't have any shaychs to the Beis Hamikdash, can't destroy a Beis Hamikdash. U'mashu apoyel hayichum na Bayis afshari zom neisha Beis Hamikdash gufa Beis binyanoi haisan nesinas makim v'afsharas l'churban. There used to be an expression years ago in consumer products. It's called built-in obsolescence. That the product is built in l'chatchila to become obsolete. The Rebbe is saying that the Beis Hamikdash was built in to become destroyed, and that's the only reason why a guy can destroy the Beis Hamikdash. V'zeu al derech mashem v'negel ish Yisrael b'chlal ein l'goy mitzadatz moishum shlita alav elim hu aydei ma'asav poloisav noisim makim lazeh. When a yid acts in a certain way that's not appropriate for a yid to act, so then he allows and gives the potential for a guy to do something to him that's inappropriate. V'yiseirim mizu loiz b'vad sheyef sh'shtir l'goy shlit al Yehudi elagam lahavdu v'chulu lebezdin v'mayish v'maylam ein keviyachol shlit al Yehudi v'adin sheim poiskim al Yehudi muchrech liyos b'askamosei shal al Yehudi, the famous word of the Baal Shem Tov on Pirkei Avos that says that at the Osed lit in din v'cheshbon, that when Neshama comes l'mayla and they start making a calculation of what he did, so they can't go ahead and judge a Yid. Malachim have no right to judge a Yid. A Yid is higher than a Malach. The only way they can judge is they ask the Yid, what would you say should be the reward or the opposite of reward for someone that did such and such a thing? So when the Yid says, this and this should be their punishment, he said, you did this and this, so therefore you're getting this punishment. So the Bezdin Shomayla cannot say it. By the way, the Rebbe learns out an amazing limud from this. He says that we should always accustom ourselves to speak good about another Yid and to always judge a Yid favorably, dan l'chav schus, and to even think good about another Yid. The Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Amarim Tanya. Why? Because if we get into the habit of doing that, so after 120, and we'll be by the Bezdin Shalmaila, and they will ask us, there's a Yid that did da-da-da-da-da-da. So if I'm used to my whole life, I'm always judging people favorably, and I'm always saying good things about other Yidden. So when they'll present me with this case, I'm sure he didn't mean it, he didn't think, he didn't know, he forgot, da-da-da-da. Because I'm so in the custom, I'm so in the habit of thinking positively about it. So the Bezdin Shalmaila won't be able to do anything with me because I didn't pronounce anything bad about myself. But everyone says that in it. Anyway, back to our topic. V'zeu ma shekosva Rambam, she'efshoros l'churban habayis im epnei she'ba'ei she'bonu shloimes hamikdash lo yizabel vad she'yada she'soifil l'chorev el hichnis v'kava b'sechak binyan gufes nesinas hamakim l'churbanoi bana by makim lignis be'aron. That's why it was possible for a guy to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, because Shlomo Hamelech already built this into the Beis Hamikdash. Of course, it wasn't up to him, because Hashem told him to, like we said before. This is something by Hashem's command. But L'Poil, it had to be something that was already part of the Beis Hamikdash, or else a guy could never have destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. When they built the Beis Hamikdash, Ad Kedei Kach that year on Yom Kippur, when they finished the Beis Hamikdash, they didn't fast on Yom Kippur. It was such a great simcha. So how can it be? In the most happiest time, in the most exciting time of building the Beis Hamikdash, he's building something about Churban. So the Rebbe says, this teaches us that Churban is not what we think it is. Muvan asher ba'emes gam ha'churban negeya umevi letachlis shel binyan habayis. Va'abir v'zeh. Churban habayis lo yhoyu l'shem ha'churban atzmei chas v'sholem v'chas chalila. Ela Kodesh Hayodei Tovei Aliyah Nailis Yoser Yerida Tzorech Aliyah Ad LeBinyan Habayis Hashlishi Sheyiyah Bayis Nitzchi Vazaytiyah Shleimus VeBinyan Beis Hamikdash Ki Hu Yiyah Binyana D'Kudsha Brichu Mikdash Adnai Koini Yadecha, that will be everlasting. So the Churban, like the Rebbe explains in other places, that just like we have a mitzvah, we're not allowed to destroy any part of the Beis Hamikdash. How did the Eibusha destroy the Beis Hamikdash? Because the destruction was not destruction. The destruction was for the sake of having a better Beis Hamikdash. It's like remodeling. So that's what Shlomo Hamelech, at the time of the Simcha, the Beis Hamikdash, built in something to be able to remodel it, to be able to bring to a higher level of a Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. V'zeh mashkos v'Rambam be'esh shebonu shleimus habayis u'b'derech memela yada shesoifil l'charev. Why? Because he knew this was a human thing. As we know that since it was Binyan de Barnash, Kivim Shai Binyan de Barnash, it was a human building. Azai Bona by Malkim Lignas by Cholom, Hainu Shakava, Vihichnes, Bebinim L'Chatchila, as Nesinas Hamakim L'Churban. Kedei Shala Achre is a Tavai Al Yod, Ayidea Yerida Shala Churban, Ha'aliyah Shal Bayis Shlishi. Ve'inyan Zeh, Shema Shesoifi L'Charev, Hu L'Tzoyrech Ha'aliyah Shala Achre Zeh, Mudgish b'maisa ze gufa she'asa shloime bana by makim lignus by sa'aron sheyesh by shnei ktzavis. This building of a place under the Beis Hamikdash shows both the Churban and the Geula and the Aliyah is going to come afterwards. Mechad yisab moira davar shabayis gazeh shesoyfi l'charif. Aval li'idach hamatara shebniyas makim agnizi la'avtiach asan nitzchis shel ha'aron Beis Hamikdash ha'ideza huftach shegam bebayis hasheni lo yichsarn bebina bayis v'yiseirim ezu adavar iftiach sha'aron gufi yishar b'shleimusay u'memenu yibana mechadash habayis hashlishi kanal siftes. Now the Rebbe is going to go a little bit in a deeper concept, al derech hadrush, why he talks about it was matmoinius amukis. Let him just say he dug out a hidden place under the Kodesh Hakodoshim. What's this expression? Matmoinius amukis. Al piz yesh lefarish gam kim pnimis in yon, the meshloishes al shoyin shekasav Rambam moedes hamakim shoganos by Aron b'matmoinius amukis v'akal kolos. Bekach meramaz Rambam le'ilu shenoise b'migdash ha'idezeh shebanu b'makim ligdis Bayis Aron. Afal bishe b'chitzonius hayadavar kashali nachurm, like we said before, soife lecharev hinidavke b'emtzais yirida zu nasis ha'idea tikun v'tshuva ha'idea yirida ha'aliyah. His galus b'chins matmoinius hamukis. There is deep levels in Elikus that can only come about not through the avoid of tzaddikim, that can only come about through the avoid of Baal Tshuva. Things go south, things go bad, there's churban, but then we fix the churban, and we do tshuva, then we get to matmoinius amukis, to the deepest levels in Holocaust that tzaddik in the Bayis Sheni you can never reach to. Hamadreges achinayos belakus shemitzad atzrom matmoinius amukis lashon rabim. Amek miyim tzenu, it says how deep Hashem is. Like makim krasicha Hashem, there's two pirushim in that pasuk. Makim means the omek halev of the person, or it means from Hashem's deepest, most levels. Asher idea avodah regila b'ofen yashar, efshar sheyin nemshachis only dafkai de avodas hatshuva. Haba la'achri shenag adam like if he shall kim atzas adam yashar. He didn't go the straight way. Ella b'derech shal kalkolos. He went a winding way. He went off the path. Nasis eilach al kolos mal yusa. Then it becomes a winding path in a good way. Hamshachas hamatmoinius hamukis she'enan hamshachas b'derech oir yashar. That doesn't come down when we're doing everything straight. Ela b'derech oir chayzer al kolos. V'zeh yeh b'goli Beis Hamikdash shlishi. Habinyan anitzchit sheyibonu v'yizgalu b'mheira meinu mamish b'gula mitzvah shleim.